get to have more birthdays and anniversaries and everything else, and it was really a wonderful event here downtown. Also, I was very privileged to attend Rampart's Asian Pacific Islander Forum held here at the Chamber of Commerce, and a good turnout, and was good questions. And I think these forums, as I've always said, they're very good because it gives the community a chance to interact with us on a direct basis and see what we're doing and answer their questions. So anytime we can do that, I think is a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, there are many conflicting events during the summer, and I'm so glad you were able to attend both of those. We have much more coming up in this month. I did say commission comments are first. There is also number one is election of officers, and if you could report on that, the report of the executive director.
We will be continuing the election of officers until the August 13th meeting to ensure all the commissioners are here.
All right. Thank you very much. And now we will turn to the report of the Chief of Police.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We continue to have a good year relative to crime. Total Part 1 crime is down a little over 6%, 6.3%. Property crime is down 5.2%, with all four categories of property crime showing reductions compared to last year. Most encouraging, violent crime is down 11.2%, with reductions in all four categories of violent crime. Homicides down just under 7%. Gang crime also down throughout the city, a total of 16.8%. Gang-related shootings are down almost 18%. Gang crime is down in all bureaus. Our personnel strength, we have 9,992 sworn employees. We have 269 level 1 reserves, 21 level 2s, 128 level 3s, 371 specialist volunteers, 34 chaplains. We have 523 civilian vacancies, and we are deployed at 2,824 civilian personnel. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. And the report of the Inspector General.
Thank you, Madam President.
Executive Director, are there any other reports?
No other reports.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President and Commissioners. A brief update. Last week, the Commission asked me to report on information related to working with the Department on getting some of the information for risk management. We are working with the Department, and we'll have that information this week, and I'll report back to you sometime in the future on the status of that. Give also a brief update on some of the community work that we are doing in an effort to get some of the information that we have, the public reports, for example, disseminated to the community and have it a little bit easier for individuals to follow what's happening within the department. We're trying to expand our outreach effort as far as obtaining contact lists from national and other organizations, but mostly their regional LA and California branches. For example, the Urban League, Churla, MPAC, CARE, ACLU, we will be meeting with them and making sure that the parties that they want to receive these reports on a timely manner, we'll get them as soon as they become public and not have to search for them. And we're hoping to expand our list of a few hundred people even more, so when the reports are made public, with a push of a button, our office is able to actually send those out to the various stakeholders in the community. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. All right. Number 6 is information only, the filed items. We have 2 noise variance permits on file for the period ending July 26th, 2013. And we also have 5 special event permits. More details are in the full agenda. And that's for the period ending July 26, 2013. Are there any presentations today?
No, we have none.
All right, our consent agenda item, that's item 8, A through C.
Move approval of items 8A through C.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved. And now we move to the regular agenda items. We have 9A through E. We will be hearing, I know, the department's report relative to the mediation of bias policing and discourtesy complaints. Are there any other items that the Commission wishes to call forward?
No, I move approval of regular agenda items 9B through E.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Approved. And now we'll hear from the department on the mediation of bias policing and discourtesy complaints. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Rick Webb. I'm the Assistant to the Director of the Office of Administrative Services and formerly the Commanding Officer of Internal Affairs. Commander Maislin is the current Commanding Officer of Internal Affairs Group, and one of the chief architects behind this program is Detective 3 Kathy Haskins, who sits behind me. And if there's any blame for any of this, it's going to be hers, and if there's any credit, it'll be Commander Maislin and myself. But Kathy Haskins really did a great bulk of the work on this and really does deserve a lot of the credit. By way of introduction, as we all know, the consent decree many years ago required that Internal Affairs investigate allegations of what was then called racial profiling or invidious discrimination, which included racial profiling. So as we all know on this commission and at Internal Affairs, we set out to examine racial profiling, and we stumbled quite a few times. I don't think there was anybody in the country that was really doing those types of investigations. The topic was difficult because on one side we had cops saying that we're not racist, and on the other side we had some community members who said they were essentially targeted due to their race. And in the middle of that whole thing was Internal Affairs and certainly the Commission and the Chief of Police, and we wanted better quality cases. We wanted to do the right thing, but we weren't quite sure what the right thing was. But I knew that IA certainly wanted to provide better cases, but ultimately what was coming out of those really wasn't all that robust or positive. Most of the cases were unfounded or not resolved, and you may recall we had some audits that indicated we weren't doing that well. And the community member, often after the personnel complaint was adjudicated, they'd get what I call a go-to-heck letter, or sometimes even call it something a little different than that, 10 months later, which said the complaint was unfounded or not resolved. And that certainly inflamed community tensions even worse because, as we all know, you get kind of settled down and then you get that letter and it just inflames things again. So I happened on the idea of constitutional policing, which was not only would we look at the person or the complainant's allegations of misconduct, but then also we examined every bias policing case or racial profiling case at that time through the lens of the Constitution, because it was very difficult to measure or examine bias, but it was pretty easy since we have a Constitution and a body of law to look at and judge the way officers handled a particular case based upon search and seizure and those types of things. And the good part of that is it really started focusing, at least Internal Affairs, and I know it's one of the chief's main goals is constitutional policing, but it organizationally and institutionally inculcated that throughout through our culture. But even then, there was, still work to be done. So I happened to meet with a person by the name of Dr. Lori Friedel, who is a former research head of the PERF, but also she is truly an expert in the issue of racial profiling, and she first introduced me to the idea of bias rather than racism. You may recall that she actually came and spoke to the commission some years ago, and ultimately we learned, I think we all collectively became educated, that we're really talking about issues of bias and not racism, because I don't believe there's many cops that are racist, but I believe there's 100% of all of us who have some sort of bias. And so we started looking at issues of bias, and ultimately you may recall that we changed the policy to bias policing for a whole bunch of reasons. One, because it really wasn't an issue of racism, but also there were folks in other protected classes who weren't even mentioned. Could have people who are stopped because of their religious convictions, their sexual orientation, whether or not they have gray hair, those kinds of things. So the policy was changed, but then also Dr. Friedel said that some agencies, such as LAPD, takes racial profiling so seriously that they investigate every case, but other agencies take them so seriously that they mediate every case. And then I happened to go to a discussion at Loyola, as I recall, and it was going to be a discussion about racial profiling, bias policing, and I wasn't looking forward to it because I knew it would be kind of a tough discussion. And one young man who happened to be African American said that he was out driving around with his friends at about 2 o'clock in the morning. They got stopped by the police, searched, and the usual routine. And he said, "Isn't there some way that I could meet with those cops and repair a relationship?" So it became apparent to me, and I think to everybody else, that mediation of bias policing was certainly something that we may want to do. So that whole thing was introduced as a concept. And then we ultimately, and I know that Mr. Mack was there, and I can't remember who else was there, but we met at the Western Justice Center, I believe it was, and had a very large cross-section of members of the community, from everybody from the Police Protective League and other people in the civil rights movement, minority groups. We all met there and talked about the concept of bias policing mediation. And very few times in my career have I ever seen anything that can be described as a no-brainer, but that was a no-brainer for everybody there. Everybody on both sides of the fence, or if there was a fence, really realized that it may make more sense to try to mediate some certain aspects of these cases so that we can have some sort of mediation and some sort of agreement in the middle of this whole thing. So ultimately what happened was we proposed this thing and started meeting with the Police Protective League, who would be the majority of the accused are members of the Protective League, and started trying to work on some details. And as you know, we had to put this on hold for a while, but ultimately resurrected this process and worked out some of the details, which is really where Dr. Kathy Haskins did the bulk of her work. So we came up with this program, and as I say, the devil is in the details. It's kind of nice to say that we would do mediation, but really how would we accomplish this? So over a very long time, ultimately we came up with what was submitted to the Police Commission today. And the devil is in the details, and ultimately a summary is this, that we would select the cases which are contained on, I think, page 3 of the document. And roughly, it's no constitutional cases, so we don't want any constitutional policing issues. We don't want any cases where there's use of force issues, any cases where people are injured, or where there are allegations of criminal misconduct, or where an ethnic remark was allegedly made. So really what we wanted to mediate were those cases where, harken back to many years ago, where most likely would be an unfounded or not resolved complaint, where it was essentially in the dead of night, a police officer stops somebody, there's some sort of interaction, and neither one of them feel that that stop went very well, and the community member makes an allegation of racial profiling or bias policing. So those are the limitations, and then later we added minor issues, and I encourage everybody to remember that. It's very minor issues of discourtesy, so that it really says that we will mediate select cases of you stopped me because of my race and you weren't courteous when you did it. So the way the program is designed to work is, first of all, it is a pilot program. We met and conferred on the bulk of the issues with the Police Protective League. But the way the program has to work is, and I think we have it a 36-month pilot.
Yes, 36.
Because for a whole bunch of reasons. One, we think 36 months will get us a good body of data, but also maybe 25 to 50 cases a year. But anyway, so what has to happen is that before we can do anything, we have to have a good intake. When I say intake, I mean we understand what happened during that complaint. We certainly don't want to go to bias a mediation where we all of a sudden find out a bunch of new issues. That would just be a total waste of everybody's time. So we want to have a good understanding of the four corners of the investigation, and if it qualifies, A commanding officer from Internal Affairs would review that and approve that particular process to go to mediation. I also want to emphasize that everything that Internal Affairs does would be available to the Inspector General for audit purposes, and that mediation would be voluntary both on the police officer's part and on the community member's part. And as I recall, we also have a bit of a level of no more than 2 prior cases for the police officer to make them eligible or ineligible to go to mediation. And there would be a coordinator from within the police department who doesn't mediate, but they actually just essentially try to reach out to the community member and the police officer, both of whom need a little bit of salesmanship to encourage them to go to mediation. And then the mediation would take place in front of a third-party mediator that somebody's not associated with the police department. Right now, that would be the City Attorney's Office of Dispute Resolution. However, it could possibly be, somebody else. Maybe it could be the law school or something such as that. And so mediation then, unlike some legal mediations, is not necessarily where both sides have an agreement. But where, as I said before, can't we just repair a relationship? And so that's really what the design of this is to have the community member and the cop get together and to discuss the issues and try to see each other from, stand in each other's shoes for a moment. And once mediation begins, the case will go on to the officers' team's report as mediated. So we had to create a whole new category for that. Then after that, the case is closed. The hope for this is that it's a transformational experience for the police officer and for the community member. Being a cop is a dangerous, dangerous business. They give us guns for a reason, because we have situations where officers are in dangerous circumstances. And so it's a member of the community needs to understand that and remember that cops don't know exactly what they're going to be confronted with when they stop a car. But also cops need to remember that community members often are just trying to live their lives, and they deserve the utmost respect, and as much respect and dignity as we can possibly afford them. So the mediation program is designed to, as I said, be transformational, and it is an experiment. It could fail. But we're going to be looking at that to determine whether or not it is a failure. We've submitted a grant application through the COPS office. We don't know if we'll get approved for that, to actually have an academic institution, USC, we're hoping, to examine the efficacy of our mediation efforts and then ultimately report back to the academic world on just how this whole thing's working. Now, Commander Maislin has done a lot of work with the city, more work than I have with the City Attorney's Office and the whole nuances of that. And as luck would have it, I left Internal Affairs and, of course, throw this into his lap. But in any event, that's kind of the sum and substance of it, and I don't know if there's anything you want to put on the City Attorney's side or any of that kind of stuff.
I think you already addressed it, but the first thing we met with the city attorney last week, and there are some fine details we need to work out, but the first thing they did was hand us a letter of support signed by the new city attorney, Mike Fuhr, which we were then able to forward on, actually to the NIJ supporting the program. So the support is there, and we just need to iron out some details and get moving on it.
Well, first of all, I would like to commend Commander Webb, because I know you have lived with this for several years, 2010 or so, and several of us on this commission certainly have sort of lived it with you. I think that there's great potential here, and I think it potentially can offer another tool in the arsenal of in our desire to address this very, very difficult and frequently contentious issue, whether you call it racial profiling or biased policing. And as you know, and I know Commander Webb, over the years since I've been on this commission, 8 years, you frequently appeared before this commission, and I know that there were a lot of times that you would have preferred not to because I badgered you and gave you a hard time. But I'm very, very hopeful and optimistic that this, the mediation, as it's been very, I think, carefully considered, and certainly as a member of the subcommittee of this commission that certainly worked very closely with you, and had the opportunity to not only read the report but discuss it in depth. I really, really think that it offers us a tremendous opportunity to help resolve some of these issues. And as you mentioned, certainly it's going to be a limited universe of even potentially eligible cases for this. We are in no way ducking that hard challenge of really thoroughly investigating under the leadership of Commander Maisling, serious allegations of biased policing, and certainly the other process that has been, I think, very thoughtfully and carefully put together is still there and still be utilized. So it's important for the public to understand that this is a narrow universe that we're talking about, number one. But the potential of mediation hopefully will offer the opportunity for communication, and as you've indicated, for individuals from the community who feel that they have been targeted because of their race or because of their ethnicity. In some instances, maybe it was because they ran into a police officer who, frankly, maybe was rude and discourteous, and that's sometimes we've talked about. On the other hand, hopefully can open another level of understanding by individual officers who may have, frankly, inappropriately stopped somebody. And there can be a meeting of the minds. As saying goes, nothing ventured, nothing gained. As you said, it may be a smashing success or it could be a failure, but I think this is another example of how far this department has come, in terms of being willing to try new and different things to make sure that we're truly policing this very diverse city with respect and in a responsible way, and certainly under the leadership of Chief Beck, I'm sure that we're going to be taking another step in the right direction. So I certainly, for one, fully support this effort. It's been a long time coming. As some of you know, I've grown pretty impatient over the timing. We know it was put on hold for a while, but I certainly welcome it and certainly fully support this recommendation.
And I have a few comments as well, and I agree with everything Commissioner Mack has said. Certainly commend Commander Webb and the others who have worked on this. It's been a long and difficult effort, and I think it's worth taking a moment to reiterate the Commissioner Mack's comments about how significant this is. It's not that long ago in the commission meetings with the chief, not Chief Beck, our former chief, Chief Bratton, when we talked about this problem, and the chief essentially said there was no solution to it, that it was intractable, that there was never any way to get inside the officer's head to figure out intent, and that this was a problem not of the LAPD, but nationally and societally, and we were doing the best we could, and that was essentially it. And we've gone beyond that, thanks in great part, I think, to the persistence of Commissioner Mack, the leadership of Chief Beck, hard work of Commander Webb and others, so that the intractable part of the problem, which always at its core struck me as a significant percentage of people in the minority community express sincerely their belief that they have been stopped based on their race. And then the percentages tend to be pretty high, 40%. And on the other side, the department and the officers saying essentially it never happens. And clearly those are inconsistent, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, closer to one than the other. But this, I think, is a real step toward resolving some of that for the department and for the community. And I think the significance of it is really worth noting. Just two other comments about it, because I think the program that you've put together is so well put together. One is the connection into Teams 2, which I think is very important and seems to me you've handled perfectly. The other is, as we all know from our discussions over the last few weeks about risk management, one of the issues the department's working on is employment-related litigation with employees who feel that they have been mistreated in some manner by the department. And part of the response to that is also the consideration of a mediation program. And when we talked about that program last week, we talked about the need for any mediation program to be based on mutual trust, sharing of information, and this program seems to me to be exactly the way we were talking about last week, what we think the employee department program ought to strive toward being. And I think it's encouraging to me to see the department put this forward in this context with respect to the community, and I encourage the department to look at its work here and apply it to its work in the employment litigation context. I only have one question, which was for the Inspector General. I think I know the answer to this, but I'd like to know, which is whether, Inspector General, that you feel that you've been involved enough in this process. Are there issues about it that you'd like to bring to our attention, or are we seeing it accurately as something that's really quite good and ought to go forward?
We're supportive of the program as well.
Thank you very much. And thank you again for all your work. I think it's very significant.
Okay, go ahead.
First, I would echo the comments of my friend Commissioner Mack. I 100% in agreement. I have a question, though, about the program, and I didn't understand it from reading the report. Is where is the pool of mediators coming from?
These would be mediators that currently work in the City Attorney's Dispute Resolution Program.
That's what I didn't understand. Are they city attorneys, or is it some pool of mediators like ADR or?
I think they're all volunteers, right? Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
They're volunteers that are trained by the City Attorney's Office.
But they're not employees of the City of Los Angeles.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where do these volunteers come from?
I think they come from all walks of life and from all communities. One of the things that we insisted upon, though, is that any mediator in this program cannot be a former police officer.
Oh, I saw that.
And specifically because we need a neutral. We're looking at neutrals.
I understand.
I think what they do is the City Attorney's Office puts on training for mediation. I think it's a 5-day school, 40-hour, something like that. They get members who are interested in the community. I know there actually are some police officers who have gone through that just to enhance their skills. But typically they're just community members who volunteer to do that type of work.
Okay. I think the success of any mediation is both sides have to believe that the mediator is an honest broker. Mm-hmm. And so I would urge you to reach out to the communities that are affected, religious institutions, educational institutions, to broaden the pool of volunteers to make sure it's really representative of the community. That would be my suggestion, and you're probably already doing it, but that would be my thought.
Sure.
An actual outreach to let people know that this is out there and that they should join to become a volunteer.
Sure.
I would certainly agree with Commissioner Bernardino. I would add that while I don't know who is currently operating, but this program was, I think initiated, certainly for many, many years by Ms. Avis Ridley Thomas, who's now retired. But from all that I've heard, it's been a highly effective program, that has been well received by the various diverse communities, and I certainly know Ms. Thomas well enough to know that she would have been very aggressive in making sure that there would be a diversified group of participants in the program.
It just wasn't clear from the report. That's why I wanted to raise it.
Yes, it was a nationally acclaimed program for years and years under that leadership, in part because of the budget cuts and other problems. I don't know how robust the program has been, but I think it will be a high priority in the current administration as well. So it has done the neighborhood disputes, the barking dogs, all kinds of things quite successfully with a broad range of very diverse people. So hopefully the program will be as it has been at its strongest.
Sure.
And a good place to go. But I think the outreach and the whole idea, and I think you have that here because you're talking about on page 9, external promotion of the mediation program to get the word out. I did have one other question, which was on the meet and confer process. Is that already ongoing or
Completed.
completed?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's my understanding the Police Protective League fully supports this
Yes, they do.
program as it's presented here.
Thank you very much. And if there are no other questions,
We do have 3 comment cards.
Have our comment cards.
Okay, we have Mr. John Muma, followed by Jabril Mohammed and Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Good morning. For those of you that don't know me, I'm John Muma, Director of the Los Angeles Police Protective League and a proud member of this department for the last 25 years. Over the course of the last 4 years, I have worked with the department, primarily Commander Webb, on a series of mediation proposals. Commissioner Mack, you were a party to many of those early meetings, and I know that you and I share a desire to resolve both internal and external complaints before they get to litigation and everything that entails. Today, we are very happy to be bringing you an outstanding start to LAPD mediations. This mediation program gives the department and the community the opportunity for open and honest two-way dialogue, which should have enormous benefits for both sides. It'll explaining the how and why law enforcement action is sometimes taken and how it is sometimes perceived. The League is very supportive of this program. We have already told our membership that we support this and that it's a good place to start, and we are here today to tell you, please do this and do it now. We also ask that you don't stop there. After a year of working with the Inspector General and the City Attorney's Office, we have an excellent framework in place for workplace dispute mediations that you just addressed, sir. The city has paid $53 million to my members over the last 5.5 years for workplace disputes. The LA Times has taken you to task over this. The Inspector General recently reported to you on the disaster that is the status quo of LAPD's handling of workplace litigation. On July 19th, Chief Beck told you that he is supportive of a workplace mediation program. Bias policing and discourtesy mediations are very important, absolutely very important. But if we can successfully mediate even a few of those workplace disputes, we stand to save the city millions of dollars, maintain and protect the integrity and reputation of this organization, and provide a better working environment for the 10,000 members of LAPD that are the LAPD. Don't let momentum be lost. Do this one, follow up on the next one, and make sure it gets done. Stem the tide of needless workplace disputes, and let that be the legacy of this commission.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jabril Mohammed.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning.
My name is Jabril Mohammed. I represent the Bismillah the Justice Movement. In regards to this matter before us, I'm curious to know how much input the community has in orchestrating this proposal. The information I wanted from the Commander Webb was, in regard prior to this proposal, what was the rate of resolution in favor of the public in regards to these bias and discriminatory complaints? Do we have that information? Is it apropos for me to ask that question?
This is a time for you to express your views in 2 minutes and not to have a dialogue.
Well, my view is that I feel that there is a conflict of interest here because the people that are being recruited to mediate are being supervised by the city, and that if in fact the complainant has a grievance in regards that will evolve into a city litigation, then it would definitely be a conflict. I think we need to get the mediators from another pool, another source, more of an advocate pro public source than someone that's being trained by the city in order to mediate. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yvonne Michelle Autry.
I agree, actually. I've been advocating also that there is an oversight committee that consists of community constituency, not just police officers and or commissioners. It's biased because racial profiling exists, economic profiling exists, and so that you are not liable, you've changed the nomenclature to bias profiling, which lessens, I think, the severity of this offense, and it is really most offensive. There's a scripture in Proverbs 30:14 that says there is a generation that does not examine their own hearts but seeks to devour the poor and the needy from the face of the earth, much like those that claim the right to stand, divine right, exterminating, persecuting, terrorizing, under the auspices of officers that are supposed to serve and protect, all irregardless of their economic status or their race. Again, we do have some officers that do serve and protect, but too many do abuse their authority, using excessive force to justify terrorizing, to justify murdering those that are supposed to be adequately or appropriately restrained so that they can be heard before a jury of their peers. Again, we are innocent until we are proven guilty. So again, I hope that you do elect a committee that consists of the constituency to review some of not just the complaints, but the cases of where there have been uses of excessive force, where people have been brutalized, murdered, and again, the officers haven't been penalized, prosecuted, at least not to our satisfaction, especially in black communities with the attacks just recently, even the murder on 5th Street, Dale Garrett. We still haven't had any resolution to those cases, not to our satisfaction. Those black men were shot, and we don't have any resolution.
Thank you.
Mr. Ted Hayes.
Not exactly so, Madam President. You're precluded from having discussions, conversations, somewhat with public comment. But you can authorize your staff to say something or do something about any matters brought up by a member of the public during public comment. But during items, that's the time where we can ask questions and get a response, have a discussion, and those sort of things. I think your attorney will acquaint you with the Brown Act to that effect. Now, I don't know why you're having a problem with the police department and mediation. That healthy gentleman who spoke for the Protective League, they're always there. They're always around. They're always meddling in disciplinary matters. So what is it? I understand the suits, and it is an enormous amount of money. And I don't know whether police officers are morphing into becoming lawyers and attorneys in their own behalf or not, but it is an incredible amount of money from these disputes. And when you look at the things that some of the officers complain about, they're trivial and petty in many instances, but money is brought in on that. Dog food, are you kidding me? An officer gets a whole bunch of money because somebody played a joke on him, embarrassed him with dog food? So that's what we mean when the public recognizes that some of the quarrels you're having, or the officers are having, within the department don't rise to the level of respect when it comes to a serious complaint. As Ms. Archer just pointed out, abuse, malpractice, homicide, murder, those are the kind of things we look forward to when it comes to disputes, and they're not settled for millions of dollars.
And that is the final card, Madam President.
I move approval of regular agenda item 9A.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And now it's time for public comment.
Okay, we have 3 cards. We have Sarkis Agajanian, Yvonne Michelle Autry, and Ted Hayes.
Three months ago, I was assaulted in Westwood Park. Yesterday, my assailant was spotted there. He's done nothing. They haven't even looked for him. Now, an attorney acquaintance of mine asked me, why don't I tell you guys, since you're the commission and you're so worried about the safety of the public here, what if this guy assaults me again? Or someone else decides to assault me? Where am I to go then? Commission members? His department? They're corrupt. They're paid to play, and I'm broke. Now, what if this gentleman had called me a Jew pig, a Muslim dog, white cracker trash, a senile old man, because I am 67? Boy, you'd be on the case right away, because federal law requires it as a hate crime. But when you just beat people up for the general fun of it, what the hell? Forget about it is what this man's detective tells me. Forget about it. And when I tell him, how about if it was an attack on your wife and child, he's silent. Is this the kind of detective work we have in the West LAPD? Because that's the only one I've been exposed to. But I can assure you of something. If there's cockroaches in West LA, I guarantee you there's cockroaches in all of his department. He's impotent. He can't even control his detectives in West LA. Why hasn't this man been caught? Why? I have to come here every week, 2 minutes worth? That guy spent more time beating me up than I've been here so far. Yet, nothing's been done. Woo! I think you're a putative commission. This is not democratic. And I'm telling you, you're shameless. All of you are shameless. But I'll tell you what, democracy is coming to the USA.
Thank you. Your 2 minutes are up.
Yvonne Michelle Autry.
Well, what I wanted to say earlier, but I didn't finish, is there are those who consider themselves Jews, but they're Jews in name only, but really are the synagogues of Satan, claiming that they have this right to stand to exterminate people that they do not like. It's reminiscent almost of the Holocaust and the incrimination, the demonization of the Jewish people that occurred under Hitler's leadership. That's what I wanted to say in completion of my admonition or my recommendation that you do elect an oversight committee, not just that includes the public, so that we can have input, because you people are not considering the public's outcry and in light of the brutality that exists in our community. And for those that do, then we're incriminated. The whistleblowers, the victims, the witnesses, we're usually incriminated as either liars, drug addicts, problems, troublemakers. Specifically, one of the most upstanding members of our community, again, General Jeff, is being brought up on false charges, and I'm demanding, and I'm urging, and I'm demanding that all charges be dropped against this individual. Again, he's loved and regarded by Jan Perry. He is a highly respected executive member of Downtown Los Angeles Neighborhood Committee, which is DLANC. He serves on on other committees as well to maintain and to uplift and improve the standard of living, not only for Skid Row residents, but for all of downtown's constituency. He's been falsely accused, terrorized, harassed on many occasions by the LAPD on Skid Row while he's simply patrolling, trying to maintain a standard of quality and sanitation, which the city will not undertake. The county will not even undertake that because they claim it's out of their jurisdiction. But west of Los Angeles Street, where the constituency is greater Caucasian, they have the resources. So this is, I think, it's profiling, and I demand that all charges against him be dropped immediately.
Ted Hayes, please.
I know that you're thoroughly acquainted with contagious fire, but there's contagious crime also. Remember streaking? One guy did it, then someone else found a public auditorium to do streaking in it, and streaking became a popular event at mass auditorium meetings. And I often asked if anybody knew what the black dynamic was. Black people had no idea what the black dynamic was. It turns out the black dynamic is something that only black people in America did at one time. That was burn the city down when they became aggravated and angry. Dr. King was assassinated. Fires flared up all over the country. Rodney King was found to not have been harmed, and same thing here in L.A., as you no doubt know, 1992. So Redondo Beach points out that there's a contagion of crime. The department has to make a decision as how they're going to handle mass events, because if the Lakers lose, there's a riot. If the Lakers win, there's a riot. Because that's becoming a cultural aspect of the United States of America. Formerly in the world, at soccer matches, people rioted, had stampedes, and people were killed. But now it seems that in this country, I think what happened in California, in Redondo Beach, is going to spread nationally. I think that. Hope not. Think that. But anyway, how much overtime are we going to have to pay at events because we have to staff it with such a large number of police officers to curtail the riot or subdue the riot or oppress the riot or have such a show of force there will be no riot? That's something we have to consider. And in that regard, how much overtime have we spent on the demonstration for Trayvon? I know it's a lot more than what we spent for the Occupy.
And thank you. Jabriel Mohammed is the last speaker.
Again, good morning, Commissioners. This is a matter of a disregard for the public safety, which is a mantra of the Los Angeles Police Department. Public safety, meaning. On the May 10th of this year, I was violently and viciously attacked there on Central, down the street from the Newton Division. I was asked if, in fact, I wanted the perpetrator to be taken into custody, which I said, of course. This is, August? We're going into August. This is the 28th of July, and the perpetrator has yet to be taken into custody. I filed a complaint with Newton in regards to failure to arrest and in regards to the fact that the suspect is at large as reported. However, they are failing to take him into custody. And I've been threatened on 2 more occasions regarding this particular criminal, and this is the oxymoron of it all. Here's a man that's been a victim of a violent crime, and we know the perpetrator of the crime. However, he's allowed to be at large, and I'm curious as to why this is the case, why this person has not been taken into custody after having committed what I consider 205 PC of the Penal Code, which is aggravated mayhem, where he had kicked a man in the face and kicked his teeth out of his head. Okay, leaving him permanently disfigured. And he is still allowed to go about with the police knowing his whereabouts. Can we speak to this issue? What is necessary for this person to be taken into custody? I've complained with Mr. Bustamante's office. He has, like I said last week, the complaint was on his desk, and there's been a total disregard for my safety. And that's the gist of the complaint, as well as it's an evident bias. I see we was talking about bias today, and unfortunately, I feel that I am definitely a victim of it. So I would like to place this matter before the commission in hopes that there's some resolution in regards to the arrest of the perpetrator of this crime.
Thank you.
That is the final card, Madam President.
All right, we will now adjourn to closed session. Thank you.
The Board of Police Commissioners will now recess into closed session to discuss item numbers 10A and B in accordance with various government codes. And do we have a lot of cases? Do we have a...
The Commission has completed its work in closed session. We're now back in open session. Madam Secretary.
In closed session, item number 10A1 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 10A2 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. In closed session, item number 10A3 was discussed and the Chief's recommendations were unanimously adopted. And in closed session, item number 10B was discussed. Mr. Vice President, is there a motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you. Have a good day.
Get up everywhere. Come on. No, I can see it, man. Keep your backpack crossing up to the plane. Stop the jump, man. Scared. Don't make your fist is fast. Come on, let's go. Man, it's just a little messy, man. Move it. Make sure. Oh, snap. Marcel, come on.
Hands up, drop the cat. We got a suspect running northbound. Vandal is suspect running northbound. Get your hands all right. Get your hands up all right. Get your hands off your hips. Spread your feet.
All right, let's put him on the
Good. Get your hands behind your back. Watch your head.
Come on, man.
What it is, my name's Shy, Miss Fly, if you nasty. I'm a superstar, baby, ask about me.
As a business owner, how it affects me is it really puts a knife in the heart of somebody that has worked so hard in a business to create something positive for community and then have to deal with a tag that'll be there forever unless money is spent to correct it.
If you can look at some of our designs here at the club, this is just one example of what we can do with the art of graffiti. If you take it and you exploit it through the negative sense, where there's tagging crews, disrespect the community and disrespect others and try to take over a neighborhood or something like that. I think that's negative. I think it's rude, and it shouldn't happen.
The impact that graffiti has on a specific community is it instills fear